It's time to talk sports, time for the show. When you hear this song on the radio, it's time to tune in, better act fast. Let me get that potograph. Potograph, Sports Talk Radio. Starting now.
Let's go. What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 164 of Let Me Get That Potograph. As always, my name is Drew, or the DH, and joining me, my awesome co-host, Scott Rappaport. What up, dude?
What's going on, man?
Not too much. Excited for today, my man.
I know.
Today.
We got somebody coming on a little bit later in the show that we really don't hear from that often.
Yes.
And I don't know if he's ever done an interview like this before or had a conversation outside of like Facebook or something like that about what we're going to talk about. I am super excited. We got Terrance Wimberly joining us a little bit later in the show.
Our industry summit correspondent for the year.
Yes, absolutely. Very excited to hear about that.
No, 100%. Terrance is an amazing person. And anyone that's familiar with the show circuit knows exactly who we're talking about. But I know there's going to be tons and tons of amazing information, both about the summit and the hobby in general, because that's one knowledgeable man who loves this hobby to death. And like you said, you don't get to hear from him much. So it's gonna be interesting to see what he has to say. But we're going to dive right in, guys, and start the show off because there's a lot going on in all sports right now. You know, basketball preseason's up, football's kicking into high gear, hockey's about to start back up, the World Cup's about to start back up, and baseball you're running into it's October, so you're getting to the playoffs. So with all that comes award season, Scott, and
yes.
Obviously the focus has been on MVP and Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, all that type of stuff.
Look, dude, I love the season Ohtani put together.
Sure,
but you can't. I mean, I don't think it can go to anybody other than Aaron Judge. He was one category away. Not only did he hit 62 home runs for a new American League record, but he was one category away from what would be the second Triple Crown since like 1941 or 1967 or something ridiculous like that. Now, the one category he didn't get it in, and this was a weird year for this particular category, is the batting title.
Yeah,
and it's based on your batting average. So in the American League, Aaron Judge, he did finish second, a very, very respectable second.
Especially for a home run hitter these days where it's normally home run or bust.
Exactly. There's a lot. Those home run guys, they fly out a lot. They strike out a lot. And I will say that Aaron Judge did have more strikeouts this year than I think Tony Gwynn had in his entire
career. Yes.
But Tony Gwynn was just a special
come on
guy.
now. It's Tony.
So the batting title in the American League was won by Luis Arraez.
Mm-hmm.
Now the National League batting title, which actually topped the entire league, that was a little bit closer, and it was won by 1,000th of a point. And that went to Jeff McNeil with the New York Mets. Now, both of them, this is an interesting story, both of them rookie cards in 2019.
Right.
Arraez was an update, and he really didn't have a lot in any of the products.
Had very few.
And Jeff McNeil was Series 1 and Topps Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe he did make the All-Star team that year, too. And I think in an update, he did have an All-Star card. Now, here is where it gets interesting. Neither of those guys get any love in the hobby.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because I was looking on eBay this morning, just sold listings and things like that. You can get a Jeff McNeil Topps Chrome base rookie for, not including shipping, under $1.
Yep.
Under $1 for a guy that just won the friggin' batting title.
I know.
There has been no spike. And I will say he was very impressive because, like, at the end of June, I think he was only hitting like 273 or something like that.
Right. Yeah. No. And then you went on a tear.
He went on a tear and wound up finishing 326. Arraez has been up there at the top of the AL all season. He's been consistent. But again, when it came down to the last couple of games and it wasn't really mathematically possible for Judge to win the batting title, I expected to see a little bit of a spike for Arraez stuff, just like I expected to see a little bit of a spike with Jeff McNeil.
Well,
nothing.
Okay, Jeff McNeil, no, nothing at all. And Jeff McNeil, not as much, but Arraez, I've been a fan of him for since his rookie year.
So have I. I'm sitting on a massive haul of Arraez stuff.
I know you are. I know you have for a while. But I mean, I've been a fan of Arraez, and I don't understand the lack of hobby love he gets because he did have some hype at one time. It disappeared for a little bit, but I think it comes down to the fact that they won the batting titles and everything for average. But once again, I think we're in this era, at least in the hobby, collecting for baseball is so weird. Like if this is football, then 100% or basketball, 100% these guys are getting a bump going into the postseason, both of them. But with baseball, the hobby is a lot different, and the collecting base and the investing base, whatever you want to call it, the two sides, they don't go for things like this. They're focused more on Ohtani and Judge, no matter what happens, and then the prospects of the future that they have no clue on. There's no respect given to great players unless you were great from the start or had one of the most remarkable breakout seasons of your career where it took headlines for weeks. Other than that, nowadays, like you just said, Arraez, consistent all year long to win the batting title. A rookie that had decent hype from just a couple years ago, nothing. I mean, that's just the way.
Well, but here's what gets me. There's a guy who has a very similar, or had a very similar profile for a very long and prolific career that Arraez has now. Uh-huh. Not a huge home run hitter, not a power hitter, but consistent with a well over a 300 average lifetime, who does get an amazing amount of hobby love. And part of it is the international market.
Yeah.
And that's Ichiro.
Yes. And Arraez in the end might get that love. If he keeps it up, if Arraez is winning batting title after batting titles, in the running for all this type of stuff every year, and gets out of Minnesota to a collectability market type of deal and goes somewhere decent, then yes, I think he could see a massive surge, but it's just not the hobby the way it is now. But yeah, you're right. He is an Ichiro type of hitter if he keeps it up, if everything goes right. I mean, he's got those skills. I think Ichiro, like you said, had the international market. He also came on at a time where baseball was looking for saviors and looking for new stars because they were in a really tough spot.
And he was one of the first Japanese players to make the league.
And I think now you're just looking at baseball as a sport that's just dwindling down in popularity every single year, as opposed to trying to save it. It's more just being accepted now. And so Arraez, I think if he keeps it up, then he's going to have there's going to be hobby love eventually on him if he continues to do what he does. But I was a little shocked as well that there wasn't any movement on his cards by winning a batting title. Jeff McNeil, not so much, as you're getting lost on with so many other people over there in the National League. But Arraez,
and especially with the Mets. I mean, you got Pete Alonso over there.
Yeah,
They just called up Francisco Alvarez.
Right, he's going to be overshadowed, but Arraez is not, and so that's where I was a little surprised on that, especially winning a batting title.
Oh no, I agree. But here's the thing with McNeil. He not only won the National League batting title, he won it league-wide.
Yeah,
he had the best batting average out of any player, any qualified player in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
and still nothing.
Yeah, no, I know it baffles me. It's just like when in other sports, like in football, why a defensive player that's one of the best of all time doesn't get any love. Why some of the best wide receivers ever don't get some massive love. Why Jokic gets absolutely no love in basketball. There's always these weird oddities that don't make sense whatsoever. And, Arraez kind of being slighted, is one of those things that I think has a lot to do with the fact that there's just been an influx of so many good rookies the last couple of years. It's been tough to stand out. Now he's finally finding a way to stand out, but he's not doing it the quote unquote sexy way. He's not out there. He's not on highlight reels every single night. People aren't watching Minnesota games of the week, all the time. Like, he's not out there in the public eye to the point where I think people are saying, okay, I'm going to go chase him because of that, when there's other options and so many good options over the last couple of years. But like I said, long term, this dude continues to keep it up, consistently hit these numbers. Eventually, he's going to force collectors to pay attention.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I still expected at least,
I did too.
You could pick up his Topps Chrome Update rookie for like $5.
Yep.
And which, don't get me wrong, that's $4 more than you could pay for a Jeff McNeil.
Right. Yeah.
But I still expected a move from that $5 range to the, $8 to $10 range.
Sure. Yeah.
But nothing. No, we're still at 5. No, his autos have gone up a little bit.
Yeah.
And some of the color refractors have gone up. Because again, he was only in Update and Chrome Update.
Right.
Actually, I think
very few cards. Period.
I think he was in. He might have been in Topps Holiday that year too. But I'm not really counting that because it's that's kind of
that doesn't count.
But looking at in Chrome Update, that was that product flew off the shelf. I opened over 600 boxes of that product.
Yeah.
Both
products, both of his main rookies are products with massively low print runs as well.
Yeah. And given the prices that those products are still selling at for unopened wax, I'm still surprised that we haven't seen, an increase in that. Sure. But and there's less parallels in that product from a color standpoint than there are in regular Topps Chrome too.
Yeah.
So you have a supply issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think playing in Minnesota does play a part in it because again, I equate that in the same way to Ichiro playing in Seattle.
Yeah,
and don't get me wrong, he did go and play for the Yankees,
right?
For a little while, he got that mass market appeal, but the Seattle collector market and the Minnesota collector market are very similar, size wise and comparison wise and collector wise.
Especially when Seattle at the time already had their icon in Ken Griffey Jr., who was still around and not gone for that long after when as Ichiro went on as well. So they already had their icon. So I think that's going to be tough. I baseball players move around so much. Arraez will probably play for half of the league by the time his career's over. So hopefully he hits a better team, and he's going to keep on hitting.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. Now my other question is, since we know the Judge has got the MVP pretty much wrapped up, and we've seen a big spike in Judge's prices too, and it's a contract. He picked a hell of a year to have.
It's amazing how
this. Yeah, he's got his contract is up after the year. He's going to be a free agent unless he.
It's amazing how those athletes can do that.
I know. He just. I think he added $100 million to his paycheck
at least
based on what he did this year. MVP is pretty much baked in already.
Yes.
But do you think that when the official word comes down that he got it, are we going to see a little bit of an increase? Or do you think the market is kind of assuming that at this point?
The MVP is baked in right now, but when he's announced MVP and everything, I do think you're going to see a slight bump. I would expect to see Aaron Judge cards. Now, not across the board, not every single base all the way up to superfractors, but I would expect to see his bigger cards and big autos, things like that, to continually rise at a steady level until the lead up to next season, all off season. I don't see an off season drop off on Aaron Judge.
Interesting.
Because then the reason I don't is because people have been waiting a long time for this. People have been expecting this for Judge for a long time. There's a lot of investors and collectors with a lot of money tied up in Judge, because you remember the Judge and Bellinger craze. It was nuts. And the print run was 1/1000th of what it is today back then. The Judge chase when Chrome came out was absurdity for the hobby at that time. A lot of people have a lot of money wrapped up in him. A lot of collectors are finally, I think, saying, okay, Judge is cementing himself as he's going to be an all-time Yankee, they think. And I think he could be. Obviously, he's showing he's going to hold some crazy records for a while. But I expect to see Judge's stuff continue to rise for quite some time. I think you're going to see some absurd sales. I do think you're going to see some ebbs and flows every now and then, because it's never just going to just up. But I mean, for the next couple months, the MVP price is probably already baked in, but the potential I think people see for the future is going to drive his cards all off season.
Okay. All right.
What do you think?
You know what? I think if the Yankees win the World Series and Judge,
produces.
Look, there's two awards. Yeah, if he produces the same way that he's been producing, I think that there's 2 additional awards that, he may be in the running for if they can make it that far. And that's the American League MVP or the American League, ALCS MVP,
right,
and the World Series MVP. And if he can sweep those, I think that there is a chance that, that we could see a bigger spike.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure about whether or not that spike will hold for the off season. I've seen some pretty amazing things, happen, like big spikes going into the playoffs and, World Series stuff. And then all of a sudden, like a week after the season's done, they start coming down they start coming down a little bit off their highs until spring training starts.
And there'll be those dips. Yeah. I just don't think Judge. There will be a dip from a spike, but I do think the MVP spike is already baked in. But I think people just expect so much more from him. I think he might be a little different beast than most.
Yeah, and it's there's a very good possibility that that's the case.
Well, one way or another, we are going to find out. But we'll move on now, Scott, because you and I both know him very well. President of SGC, Peter Steinberg, finally hopping on social media too, which is good to see Peter on social media. I started getting some followers. I was like, whoa, he's finally on. Awesome. Yeah. But he jumped on social media, and I don't think it's a coincidence. But at the same time, SGC dropping some pretty big news. And since you are one of the, since you do run a bulk sub business with them and everything, I'm going to let you take this and give us the news.
All right. So we all know over the last, month or so, PSA has, dropped the prices down, a little bit from where they were at before. And a lot of people have been asking me, hey, is SGC going to follow suit? Are they coming down at all? And I honestly didn't think that they were. But Peter came out this morning with a big announcement that they were indeed lowering the prices. And they are changing things up a little bit because the pricing is going to be based on how many cards you're sending in.
Quantity.
Yeah, it's based on quantity. So on the high end price-wise, the 1 to 9 card range, it's going to cost you $24 a card, which is a $6 decrease. And these are direct prices. These are not the bulk prices. We don't, the bulk sub guys don't have the bulk pricing yet. We will have those, within the next couple of days. But the biggest thing is if you've got 50 or, and then it drops, in $2 increments based on the tier. But if you've got 50 or more cards, it's $18 a card. And that's a $12 decrease. That's more than a 33% decrease compared to the $30 that they were charging before. It's a 5 to 10 business day turnaround, and I don't see them not meeting those goals.
Yeah.
But I think it's exciting for what they're doing. So you've got pricing that, direct pricing that, and the bulk pricing is probably going to be even lower, for the bulk submission guys. But you've got pricing that is the same as what you're seeing with PSA right now, or within $2. I think what's PSA now, 20?
Yeah, around there. They're running certain specials all the time. Nat's doing specials left and right, but yeah, it's around there as well. So yeah, they're right up there with PSA pricing, or right around there.
Well, what is let me ask you this: what is Gem Mint charging right now for?
The 22 for the promotion that's on right now.
Okay, all right, cool. So similar pricing, it's with a little, but there's not that long lead time.
Right.
5-10 business days, I think is a very respectable. Even if it was 30 business days, I think it would still be a very respectable thing.
Well, so if you look at their overall, if you look at the metrics, I know a lot of people are. I forget his name, but he does a great job showing the grading metrics and everything. SGC's also their turnaround times have stayed very consistent, and they've overtaken BGS like crazy. They've passed CSG like crazy. I mean, they're consistently growing and taking in quite a bit more than ever before, and still keeping those turnaround times. So I don't think a price increase, like I saw somebody today with the price increase, say, "Up, here come the delays." No, I think they're very well equipped, and I think Peter and them do have the staff and the capability to handle anything to do with all this. Otherwise, I don't think they would have done it, because they're being very conscious of not making the mistakes they've made in the past.
Yeah. And, the one thing I will say, and I've said this in the past, is that, that they're not mistake free, but SGC, they're not mistake free. They've made mistakes, but they've never made the same mistake twice.
Yep.
So they're always learning from it. And Peter's done a great job scaling that company. From the 6 employees they had like 3 years ago, and to where they're at now. So I'm excited to see what this is going to do and how this is going to translate to the market, because obviously we know PSA as far as resale prices is the top dog. How is it going to translate to what the SGC slabs are selling for? And only time is really going to tell. But I think they've done a good job in the last couple of years, because they used to sell for 20-30% of what the same card in a PSA slab sold for, and there's some now where it's 80-90%.
Yep.
Occasionally you get one that's 100%. So it really depends. So I'm curious to see what how the hobby is going to handle it, and what's going to happen with the market.
Oh no, me too. It's going to be exciting, and like you said, the prices are definitely coming up. Comps are definitely coming up, especially on certain cards, and they keep getting more cards in, and now lowering the prices. They're doing a lot for their customers, and everyone seems to be happy right now. So big things coming from SGC. They'll be probably taking in a lot more cards after this announcement, but hopefully we'll be able to have Peter on sometime soon to discuss all that and some of the other stuff that I'm sure they got going on. But
and I did, for the record, I did reach out to him this morning to see if he could join us, but we knew that he was going to be slammed, so he was not able to pop on with us today.
Well, of course, but so
I had to ask.
Well, yeah. You gotta ask, of course, especially when you can. When we both can, you gotta at least try. But we'll have him on here soon, guys. Absolutely. But Scott Terrace here is about to join us here. So before he does, guys, we gotta go pay some bills. So we'll be right back. And welcome back, everybody, to episode 164 of Let Me Get That Potograph. And On the line now, we've got a very special guest. He is the Let Me Get That Potograph Industry Summit correspondent for this week. But most of you guys, anyone that's been to a card show, anyone around the hobby knows him. Terrance, how's it going, man?
I appreciate it. I'm good. I'm still here in Vegas. There's a show tomorrow, so I'm getting ready for the show. So I appreciate you guys having me on. I really do.
No, Terrance, and I thank you for coming out. So obviously you and I have known each other for a long time, and I've follow you on Facebook, and I've seen some of the comments that you have made about the Industry Summit for this week. What I want to hear is kind of what are you seeing out there? I want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, the whole thing, and then I'll kind of get into what kind of drew me and said, hey, I got to have Terrance on this week.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think overall everyone had fun. I think I like the networking. I mean, one thing you've been hearing for the last 6 months is the hobby is dying, the prices are going down, blah 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 blah, which I just say is an adjustment from what it was when everything was beautiful. Everything's adjusting. However, one thing I liked about the summit is there still were a lot of people from different levels of the hobby, from the kings of the hobby, all the way down to the guys who just collect. It was beautiful seeing them all together and coming out because they're really interested in the long-term value of the hobby. So to me, that was the good of it. Everyone together and get the networking and that type of thing.
Now, with the networking aspect, did you get a chance to go to the Mint? And if so, would you compare it to the feel kind of like that, or was it a little different?
I think the Mint was better, in my opinion.
Okay.
For this reason, the Mint was new and fresh.
Yeah.
This show / summit had been going on, and I think the people who have gone, whether they want to admit it or not, they kind of feel like it's stale. So there's no priority to like rush to it.
Right.
In the past, from what I've heard from other people who have attended, it was wall-to-wall people. Now you could, you walked in and there were probably about 100 open seats.
Wow.
That's a lot.
You just don't miss the summit. The summit's where it's all at. I think now it's like, well, if I'm out there this weekend, I'll go.
All right. So you've had some comments that you've made that I want to tell you right now, I agree with 100%.
Yes, I do too.
So there's some critical points that you made from things that you saw this week. Let's hear your thoughts on that.
I thought that the summit, in my opinion, if any summit, I don't care what it is, should have the people who have a firm pulse on the hobby.
Yeah.
And I felt like some of the panels, although the people were very knowledgeable. I mean, I don't want to negate anything that anyone's ever done in this hobby, but I feel like some of the guests were not up with what's going on right now. I think they should have had more young people. I don't want to quote because I'll be honest with you, I checked out of the summit because I thought the value was lessened, but not enough young people. A lot of young people are driving this hobby right now. There were none. They had James Beckett, who is the pioneer of what we do.
Right.
But for him to be a summit person, I mean, does anyone use the Beckett? I mean, let's be real right now.
Does anyone use Beckett? Yeah. Period.
Period.
Well, look, they're good. They're good for the articles. They're good for the checklists. And I like the direction. If you heard the episode a month ago with Kunal Chopra, I like the direction that he's going to be, trying to take the company in. But you're right. Nobody's used their pricing in probably 2 decades.
Yes, and because the internet drive, like I used to love the hot list. I want to see if I had a card on the hot list.
Yeah.
If I could get a card on the hot list, if I could afford a card on the hot list. Now it's like the hot list is driven by, because of social media now, we know what's on the hot list. We know people want Jalen Hurts right now without even knowing it. We know people want Herbert. Whoever won in football last year, Zion's hot again. He played healthy the other day. We don't need the the Beckett's not the driving force anymore. Now, it's not to say that we don't, us old heads like myself don't appreciate Beckett or what they did for us and giving the hobby its voice. But now to have that be a panel person, I struggled with that.
Okay. And knowing, and I agree, I do agree. I think in this, like you said before, the new era, the new, kind of feel of where we're going in the hobby. I do completely agree with you. And I think Dr. Beckett, knowing him like I do, would agree with you as well. I don't think he necessarily thinks he should be perfectly up there. But you mentioned something with some of the panels, and I looked at some of the panels, and I was really, really, I was just taken aback by what some of them were, and it seemed a lot more like the industry summit. It's supposed to be, how the industry is doing, things that are coming up in the industry. It felt much more like some of the panels were set up to specifically push an agenda, as opposed to
100%.
showing how the hobby is.
100%. It was more of a, I've made it. I'm great. I'm better than you. I have a great shop. You don't. Here's how I did it. I felt like it was highlighting some of the people. I use this term, the good old boy network. And I feel like the hobby's always been the good old boy network. Mm-hmm. The board for our national boards is people who've been there 20 years. They need something fresh. But then the board of the national basically translate into the board, how the summit was set up. It's the old heads who are driving this. But there's a lot of young people who have established themselves, influencers and that type of thing, that are driving this hobby, making people excited about the hobby that I feel they neglected. One of the things that kind of sparked me was they had a women in the hobby. Mm-hmm. And this will kind of set me off. They had a women in the hobby, and in the women in the hobby, they had a man on the panel.
Yeah, the host was Brian Gray. Yeah.
You can't have a host.
No.
You can't have, so that means next year, let's be real here, next year, when they have the minority panel, if they ever do actually have a minority panel, is Brian Gray going to be on there telling me what it's like to be black?
Right.
I feel like the women in the hobby need their forum and need their voice. Mm-hmm. And I feel like to have a man, and this is not a attack on Brian Gray, but to have a man on that panel diminishes the woman's value in their panel.
Especially when there's so many incredibly talented women that could have done that very easily. Alex, Erica, so many amazing voices that weren't on that panel that easily could have.
Yes. Why not let Sharon be the moderator of the panel? But to feel like we have a man, and then to, from what I heard, and again that they insisted that a man be on the panel. That it kind of lets you know, again, the good old boy network, what they feel about outsiders. And I guess I would say the minorities in the hobby, the women in the hobby, those are the outsiders, and they shouldn't be. We're all here collecting. Mm-hmm. Race shouldn't even matter in this hobby. It really shouldn't.
No, it shouldn't.
Or sex should matter. So it almost to the point where if you feel like you have to have it, you're acknowledging that we don't give the respect and the credit to the non-traditional people. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, and no, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
So you posted a list the other day.
Okay.
And I want to go through this point by point because there's some things on here that like opened my eyes. Like, damn, I didn't think about that. So things that you want to see from the Sports Card Summit. All right. So the first one on the list was Dallas show promoter Ship Shuan and other promoters tell us how they've established the best show in the country.
Oh, I believe that's valuable. Everybody in this hobby wants to do a show. I mean, to me, to promote a show is keeping the hobby alive. Shows are keeping the hobby alive. Card shops and shows are driving the hobby. So the Dallas Card Show, and I forgot his name. I apologize if he ever hears this because I ate dinner with him. But
You must have paid for that dinner, because if he paid, you'd remember his name for sure.
Oh no, I definitely it was a room charge to somebody else's room. I don't know. But yes, Dallas was the only place you could have a show during the pandemic. However, he has established a show that is a must go to because of the money, the activity, and the people who go. It's an experience.
Absolutely.
It's almost to the point where, like the National, the Dallas is almost like you have to go. Like the National, you have to go.
Oh yeah, no, the Dallas Card Show. I do another show called Hobby Hotline, and a lot of the hosts from Hobby Hotline live in Dallas. Rich Klein, a lot of other people that set up right there in Dallas, and Dr. Beckett holds a content creators dinner at that show because it's kind of a big meetup spot. It is one of those things that's a mini national, a destination event type of deal.
Yep.
And I feel like the show, like Ship Shawana, he puts on a great show in, I don't want to say rural Indiana, and people have to go to that show. There's hundreds and hundreds of people go because it's a great show. He puts on a great show. Prism God, Raphael, the Culture Collision.
Incredible.
What he's doing, bringing the shoes and the fashion and the cars, bringing it all together. He's had 2 great successful shows. Have them on the panel telling us how to promote a show, what they're thinking of the show, so we understand why we're paying $200 a table. There's a value to that.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, so the next one on the list, I don't want to hear a shop that has great allocation tell me how to be successful. I want to hear from a shop that's grinding and making it work.
Yeah.
If you're one of those shops, and if we ever, my goal is to open a shop. I hope to one day have allocation. Okay. But when you hear a shop that says, well, I have 10 cases of treasurer's allocation, I have 10 cases of this, and I'm successful. You don't have to ever you don't have to ever sell a single.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have allocation. In fact, you don't have to open your doors except for the day the product comes in because you're making money. I want to hear about a shop that's been open a year.
Yeah.
There's so many card owners have come who don't have allocation, who are making it work.
And this is where like Tracy and Jimmy would be amazing panelists with the roadshow card shops
who were there.
Who were there.
Yeah,
they could have gotten up and told you exactly that because they've grinded and worked, and their shops have been one of the shops been open for 18 months, the other one's been open, they've got some that have only been open like 6.
Yeah.
And my friend Jay, my Andrew Greenberg, they have shop. They have shop for 10 years, and they have a shop, and they're working toward it to building a great shop. And these are great shops, but it's like when I heard, well, engage your customers. Okay, well,
come on,
we all know that.
Yeah.
What one guy actually said, I advertise to my local area. I don't advertise to the farm community. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So that means people who live in rural areas don't deserve an advertisement, so they know where your shop is because they won't drive the hour. I live in Chicago and I'll drive an hour and a half to a card shop.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So to say you don't so I felt like the information out there and the panel, there was a little arrogant. So I think I just want to see some more diversity and some real people up there on the panel.
I completely agree with that. Before we move on to the next side, just because I know a couple people that have opened some very successful shops here in North Carolina as well as South Carolina and Virginia, and here, like you said, hearing a bunch of people who have tons of allocation tell you how easy it is just that's literally filling up time and literally just pandering to the audience and making it once again a mockery of panels that should be very, very informative and deep.
It's like having someone tell you, how do you become a millionaire? Well, my dad gave me 10 million.
Right.
And I invested that 10 million and now I'm worth 20 million. You can do it too. Well, thanks. Let me ask my dad if he has 10 million, see if I can start this.
Reminds me of that quote from Get Hard. I started this company with my bare hands and $100 million loan from my father.
There you go. Yes, sir.
All right. So next on the list, so you want Burbank sports cards. Tell us how he built a sports card community that needs to be emulated.
Okay, Robin Ryan, if you've ever been to Burbank, you have to go.
Yep.
It is a community. It's not just a card shop. They allow people to hustle, to work in there, to buy in there and move, and they're not threatened that, oh my God. Now, and the guys who come in there, they know the rules. I'm not trying to undercut the owner of the shop. They buy every day. They list a million things. If there's a model of a card shop, Burbank is where it's at. And I feel like they have some value to say how we built that and why we built it the way we did. I would love to see that on the panel.
Yeah, that would be a solid one. All right, so moving to the next one. You want to hear the top graders and submitters to explain how grading works and how they've grown their businesses.
Yes. When I feel like grading is a big part of the industry. And so everyone submits from 50 cards a month to the top graders, the Josh Cohen who do millions and millions of what they. And I feel like for graders, and I'm not a grader, but for them to explain why it takes 6 months or 6 months, or have PSA up there saying why it takes so long, because we all have that question, like, why did it take my order 1 year and 1 year and 7 months to get my card that now is worth a third of what I was when I sent it in raw. But to have the graders out there explain to people the value of grading, whatever else, for the people who don't grade, or how it worked, how group submissions work, I think that would be a good forum.
All right.
I think that's definitely needed.
All right. The next one, though, I think would be more of a webinar, just because it's a select group. And you want guys who travel for a living to show you how to cut traveling expenses and give us their opinion on the state of the hobby.
Yes, I felt like, and this is a big thing for me, the people who do card shows were out of the summit. It's like we don't exist.
Right.
And quite honestly, the card show people are the pulse of the hobby, in my opinion. We are out there every single day trying to figure out what to buy, what to sell.
Yep.
We're going city to city to city, so it matters what we have, so we can have stuff for every city. But one of the biggest things is we all do the traveling, but I'll be honest with you, I just learned about cash back. I've heard the term.
Yeah.
I just learned about staying at the same hotel so you can earn rewards, as opposed to, okay, let me stay at this hotel because it's $14 cheaper. Mm-hmm. I've learned, and I think that you learn to travel. I spend a lot of money eating and and then playing poker or whatever we do when we travel. Yeah. But I think that it makes it easier if you know how to manage your profits by not living the life. And I think a lot of young people who are doing this for a living are eating their profits because they think, I have to go to the club afterwards. Well, you don't.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with that. And this year, I've been working every single Collecticon, the traveling show across the country and everything. Yeah. So I've gone to every single one. And a couple of points you made there were dead on, especially figuring out what to sell at what particular show where you are. That's a very important thing from the dealer perspective, but from just going there and going to the events and the traveling expenses. I mean, I've literally changed credit cards for frequent flyer miles and certain things, there's lots of things to move around and how to set that up. If you have a business, how to take care of that and how to do it. And there's a lot of people getting into that. A lot of people that might not be going across the country, but are hitting up their area, the Northeast or wherever it may be with a massive amount, but they really don't know what they're doing outside of taking a wad of cash and going and hoping to, grind.
Yep. Yeah. And I think we need like an accounting firm that specializes in the hobby.
Yeah.
Yes.
You hit it right on. Have an accountant up there, because everyone's worried about paying taxes and how to do it. And how to write up. I mean, guys in the hobby are ignorant to that. And even the guys who act like they know, they really don't.
Nope.
I mean, they No, it's like, oh, I pay my taxes. Well, do you? Are you doing the right way? Are you benefiting yourself the most? I would love to learn that because I would learn to love that. And I'm 51. So imagine someone at 20 years old who thinks I gotta take cash because I'm scared to take PayPal because I don't want to pay taxes.
Right. And don't even know what depreciated losses and things like that are. And that's very, very important in this day and age.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So the next two on your list, I'm actually going to combine because there's some similarities between the two. So you want the wax distributors to explain why they charge what they do and how to build a similar entity. And the one after that is you want eBay and the auction houses to have a panel discussing their marketing of our cards and their fees.
I think that as collectors, people complain a lot about the wax prices. And people complain about, oh, this auction house didn't hype my card up big enough. They didn't do this. I didn't get this. I think a Q&A to have people be able to ask constructively, hey, why did my card not get marketed? Why did we charge so much for a box that may cost $100? Why are we paying $1,000? How do you set the market? What is dealer net? How does we come up with the price? And I think collectors need to know because how more knowledgeable we become, the better we are in the hobby. So I think to me that was more of an informational thing in my opinion.
Oh yeah. All right. Next one on the list, and this one I laughed when I saw this one, and I know why. You were this was geared to a specific audience. You want to hear from the guy that started Arraez program and explain the Arraez program and the history and origin of the program.
Boy,
Dude, come on, man. You want to know that, you just pick up the phone and you call Anthony Devine and he'll tell you everything you want to know.
To me, the hobby is about the summit is about promoting the hobby.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, that program, getting minorities in the hobby is obviously close to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
But why has that never been highlighted in any summit? Here we are trying to get kids who would never have access to these cards. They're, I grew up in Evanston, in the suburb of Chicago, where there was cards all over the place. But I can tell you most of the places in they don't have cards. So you don't even know that world is out there. So what he did was he reached out, what Anthony Devine did was reached out and bring these kids to the program, to the national, not just to a show,
right?
To the biggest event we have. That should be highlighted. And I'll be honest with you, Panini, Topps, Leaf, all these people should be sponsoring the show. And the fact that they're not sponsoring it is a travesty.
Now, I will say Upper Deck did highlight Tony.
And that's why I did not say Upper Deck.
No, I know that's why. But I wanted to point out that Upper Deck they made a card for him for it.
It was beautiful.
It was a great looking stuff.
And let me say this I don't know for a fact that, no, in fact, let me rephrase. I do know for a fact who has sponsored the program. So I feel like for every company, this is something that I think every person across the country should be doing for their communities.
I have 100.
Whether you're in New York, whatever else, and it doesn't have to be Black kids, it doesn't have to be Latino kids or what have you. If you want to reach out, have a day where you bring kids in and teach them about the hobby. It's a good program. Now, obviously, Tony and myself thing is geared toward minorities because that's our background. However, this is a good program that should be at the summit so people can learn how to do it. Community activism, that's important.
I agree. And before I get to the next one, I do want to give a quick shout out to Megan Brogy from the National, who has been very instrumental in helping Tony get that program, in the National.
Hi, Megan. We love you.
Yeah.
And Megan helping make it successful. I love Megan. She is awesome.
Oh, she's incredible. And
I would like a table up front.
I was actually set up with Jared Gem Mint Wax Pack crew at not this past national, but the one before, and we were set up right next to Anthony and the Arraez program. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you right now that you nailed it with him needing to be there. Not only one for just how amazing he is in the hobby. He's one of the people that needs to be speaking, but that program in general, watching it in action and being up close all week with it, it's one of the most beautiful things that I saw from the entire thing. So, yeah.
And building on that, here's the other thing, too. When I was talking at the summit, there have been guys who've been in this hobby for years that weren't in this up there. I mean, like the guys who have seen it when $10 made you a millionaire in this hobby.
Yeah.
Those are the guys I would love to talk to.
Right.
I mean, show me a 60-year-old who's been doing this for 40 years when a Mickey Mantle rookie was 1,000. And let them talk, because I do believe in the history of the hobby. But to have a person talk who's been in the hobby 3 years, who think, oh, yes, Michael Jordan rookies are the great investment, when it's changed. And that's why I feel like with Anthony, and Anthony and I argue about this point all the time, I felt that Anthony should be at this forum because he is an OG. He's been doing this for a long time. He's been traveling for a long time. And he's done he's done it all. I feel like those type of people should be in. And I can't think of everybody across the country, because I know there's people all across the country who've been doing it for years.
Right.
But those are the people who I feel like should be out there.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear, I mean, obviously I talk to Tony all the time, but like, I want to hear from guys like Eric Burks.
Right.
Yes.
And, you know, who's had a successful shop for a long time and made it work. And you know what? He is in the middle of nowhere. Decatur, Illinois.
And he has a successful shop and with a great experience. People love going there. And I think he's working on the allocation part. I don't know if he even has allocation. So what his success is his hard work, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah. All right. So the next point, which is why I brought up Megan before. So you want a women's panel that only has women on it. Now, we touched on this earlier. And no, you don't want a male moderator.
Never.
And wait, here's the most important part. You don't want it at 8 a.m. after everybody's hungover and tired from the night before.
With you, I'm not gonna be, and I might get flack for this. They have a women's panel, and then they put it at 8 a.m. the second day of the summit. when they have events, hey, go out and party. We just got to Vegas. You know how car guys are. They're gonna go drinking. They're gonna hang out. They're gonna hit the tables, so on. And then you guys at 8 o'clock. Why do they not put it at 3 o'clock in the morning? Here you go. Hey, guys. Women's panel at 3 o'clock. It lets you know that they don't. I mean, why have any event at 8 o'clock in the morning?
Agreed.
And they can say, oh, well, it's the thing. And if the people take it serious, they should get up. Come on, man. Have the summit run to 6 as opposed to start at 8.
Yeah.
If you're going to have it in Las Vegas, give people enough time to adjust. And here you have Vegas, so you can enjoy Vegas.
Yep.
Right.
So and I felt like the women panel was that early because, nobody really gonna come to it. So let's have it at 8. And I feel like, I honestly, and again, I don't want to speak for the summit people, but that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Right.
I think women in the hobby is a more important thing because we're talking about inclusion and diversity.
Yeah. Yep.
That should be 12 o'clock right before lunch or right after lunch.
No, that should be one of the featured things of the day.
Yes. I mean, what do they have yet? Hey, I'm going to have an alarm system. If you want to have a shop, make sure you buy an alarm system. Thank you. I was wondering about that. Make sure your alarm is loud. Thank you. I was wondering about that.
All right. So along the same lines as the women's panel.
Okay.
You want to see a minorities panel in the hobby.
Yeah.
And you reiterated the point that you don't want to see a white guy moderating it.
I would walk off the panel if I walked up there and there was a white guy saying, Terrance, I understand your plight. I would, because if you're going to have a panel that highlights a certain population or a certain group, you need to give them a voice.
Yeah.
You're taking away their voice if you have. Now, if you want to have it, because I do believe minorities in the hobby are, and I'm going to be real here, are treated differently. I'm not talking about myself, who've been doing this for 30 years and is very charismatic and everything else. I'm talking about the people who just walk in. There's a thing of how they feel, and I've talked to them. We have a forum about it where you feel, and I'm not talking about just blacks, Indians in the hobby, Latinos in the hobby.
Latinos, yeah.
I've heard them say, people judge me right away. Oh, you don't have the money to buy it.
Right.
I walked into a card shop in Boston, and this guy looked at me like, that card is $100. I almost wanted to buy the whole showcase to let him know. But he profiled me right away because I had a t-shirt on, I had some Nike shoes on, and I looked like, okay, this guy doesn't probably understand what he said. He just walked off the street. I know how some of my younger guys, they walk in, they say, man, this guy wouldn't give me a deal because he assumed that he looked at me like I was going to do something. And so there is a forum, and I do think diversity and inclusion is very important in any area. And the hobby is growing fast. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons why Tony had the Arraez program. We want more diversity. I would love to see more women in the hobby, and not just girlfriends being dragged to the show by their boyfriend.
Right.
Oh yeah. I think it's a great point.
Yes.
I think it's and I do want to point out really quick though that you've only been doing this full time. You've been in the hobby for as long as I can remember.
Yes.
But you've been doing this as a full-time job for what, 2 years now?
No. February 21st.
February. Well, okay, because I know. So you left your full-time job.
Yes.
Working, and I'm gonna tell you, man, I have a lot of respect for what you used to do, man. You used to work with autistic people.
Yeah. I worked at a group home and a day program for 20 years, 25 years, give or take, for in the Chicago area for 25 years.
And I'll tell you, man, dude, I have a lot of respect for not just you, but just the people that do that, do that job. And
it's very hard. It's a very hard job.
Yes.
The agency I work with, we upped the pay, so we made it a livable wage. I mean, we were paying pretty good, $20, $21 an hour at the time. Which I know there's some teachers that don't make that. So we did the best we could with the budget that the state gave us. But it's a hard job. Sometimes it's a thankless job. But I was the director. I just burned out, and I just wanted to try something different. And I'm glad I did.
All right. So the last point you made is you wanted to see the repack folks talk about the development and distribution of their products.
Yes. I feel right now the repack people are saving the hobby. They're buying that $50 to $300 to $50 to $1,000 repack stuff that we all have when we open boxes or we buy, and they're buying it at 85, 90%, sometimes 100%. It allows people to know they got money coming in. So a lot of people don't understand, well, what do they buy? Why do they buy it? What's it for? With the wax prices so high, repack boxes have shifted. Because if you open a $1,000 box of Prism and you pull, a Tony Kukoc auto, you're mad. But a $200 repack card and you pull a Jonathan Taylor auto, you don't feel bad. You only spent $200. You only spent $100 or $50. I think it's important because repack is a really big thing. The Laytons of the world, so many.
Now you're talking about just point out. You're talking about Rich Layton, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
All the repack guys, ultimate breaks. I mean, a lot of the people who do repack, and I don't want to miss them all because I deal with them all, and I apologize if I'm missing the 50 repack people because there are a lot.
Hey, as somebody who owns a repack company that's in the process of it, I know. So yeah, there's quite a few of them, but I agree with you.
But you are saving the hobby because guys know, like, for example, today, I know no matter how my show goes, I have $6,000 to $7,000 coming because I have that much of $50 to $200 stuff.
I'll be in Hickory buying that stuff this weekend.
Hey, well, when you see me next, I got you.
There we go.
Yep. There we go. So Terrance, I think if we were to take every point from your list and just create a summit around that,
yes,
I think that would be an absolutely unbelievable event.
And I'll be honest with you, I was talking to Prism guy Raphael, the guy that promotes Culture Collision, and I said, if some people don't want to come, here's the other thing too. I actually believe the summit, because it's hard. I mean, Vegas is expensive.
Yeah.
But to have it like you got to have a forum here, an online video conference where people can chime in. Because I think the summit should not be limited to the people who can afford to spend $3,000 in a week.
Right.
It should be across the board where you can log in and hear about it. And I can speak for a lot of the big guys. I'm sure they would take the time out of the day to do it.
Yeah. And it could be something where, it's a $25 to join fee.
Yes.
You get a lot more people that can afford that than can
Yes.
afford to spend $3,000 to fly across the country in the middle of the week.
Yes.
To attend.
Yeah.
So, but all right, Terrance, dude, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you
I
for
always
having
love
me.
talking with you.
And I want to thank you too for allowing me to forum, because a lot of people thought I did it just to kind of make a rise out of people, but I really did. I really made that list and said what I said because, one, out of respect for the women who felt slighted.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to stick up for them because they're very capable, but I felt like they were slighted because I feel like we're all minorities. But I also did it because I really do care about the future of the hobby. It's my job aside from that, but thank you for allowing me to kind of explain and articulate what I was thinking.
No, not a problem. And hey, before you go, tell everybody where to find you. Instagram, Facebook.
I have two Instagrams, Lot Chasers, LOT.chasers, and Terrance Twism, TerranceTwism, and I'm pretty active. I post pretty much every day, and obviously I'm on Facebook. So
awesome. Well, Terrance, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was excellent to have you on, and thank you for everything that you do for the hobby as well.
Thank you. Great show.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Terrance.
Man, what an interview, dude. Terrance is awesome.
Terrance, I love Terrance. I've known him for a long time, and he has never been one to hold back and not speak his mind on something. And we got to have him on more often.
Yes.
Because it's always a fun conversation, when Terrance is in there with you.
Absolutely. And some very valid points on the industry summit and some critiques that I had heard from some other people. I love his plan for everything. You can tell by talking with him. If you don't know him, you can tell just by listening to him, the passion and the love he has for this hobby and just the people in it, because we say it all the time, John Newman, it's his slogan, the hobby is the people. But I talk about it all the time, how the Let Me Get That Potograph listeners, everybody, it's a community, it's a family, it's very close knit, and it always has been. And a lot of people will say that that's gone, but it's not. But I would argue it's growing stronger than ever. But he's just such a wonderful person, and he needs to do more interviews because he's very well spoken. He's got some great ideas.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. He is definitely a guy that you want to listen to when he talks.
Yes.
The ideas that he comes up with are amazing. How he's been able to, transition from a different job into doing this full time in a very short period of time. Now, part of that is because he's been involved on a part-time basis within the hobby for 20 plus years, but he was able to basically flip overnight and be like, this is full time, and be able to make it work.
Yeah, he's a grinder, man. That's what it is, and it shows. But it was an absolutely wonderful interview, and guys, we wanted to, since obviously you're going to have 8 million Industry Summit recaps from people that weren't there, we wanted to make sure we actually had a correspondent that was there to kind of give you some information on the ground floor. So hopefully you guys took as much from that as we did. And as Terrance said, if you are one of the new listeners, as we've had so many new listeners coming to the page lately, education is very important. Educate.
Yes. And also, if you're new, go back and listen to some of the older episodes.
Yes. Absolutely. You'll love them. There's some excellent ones, especially the Beckett interview, Steve Grad, all the way back in the beginning, dropping some major news. There's tons of awesome ones in the archives. We're actually going to put out a best of here shortly, where we'll put up some of the ones from the recent ones since the last best of episode, since it is about that time at the end of the year. We always put one out. So you guys will be getting some of that soon, but go back, check out all the old episodes as well. And speaking on that, Scott, I think this is a good time at ending to wrap this one up. I think Terrance kind of knocked it out of the park there.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that's one of those like mic drop moments where you just kind of walk off and say, see you next week.
Yeah, I ain't topping him today. So
No.
We'll give Terrance his walk-off right here. But yeah, guys, so that is going to wrap up episode 164 of Let Me Get That Potograph. Once again, I'd like to thank our awesome sponsors, Card Ladder, Vandy Slab, Show Your Slab, Slab Strong, and Denver Card Shows. We could not do this show without you guys. And of course, Let Her Rip, new episodes every single week, and Hobby Hotline over on Bench Clear Media on Saturdays, and then the Hobby Hotline channels on Tuesdays. Make sure to check those shows out as well. I'll be at the Hickory Show this weekend if anyone's there, and then Denver next weekend at Collecticon, so make sure to come say hey if you hit up the Collecticon show in Denver as well. A lot of awesome stuff coming up from Let Me Get That Potograph. We got some really cool stuff, a new segment, not of the show, but a new social media segment will be debuting here very, very soon, so be on the lookout for that as well. But Scott, awesome episode, dude.
Yep. Same as always, Drew. I think we keep topping it every week, so I'm excited to see what we've got in store next week for us.
Well, I'm sure the hobby will give us lots and lots to talk about. But until next week, guys, you know the deal. Keep ripping those packs, pulling those hits, and we'll talk to you then. Peace!